to this meeting of Babergh District Council. I'm Councillor Elizabeth Malvisi, Chair of Babergh District, and I will be chairing this meeting today. May I first of all remind you of some domestic arrangements. Toilets are situated outside the meeting room, opposite the stairs. Cold water is also available in the breakout area outside the meeting room. If the fire alarm should sound, please leave the meeting room by following the fire exit signs and meet on Ipswich Town Football Club training pitch. Do not re-enter the building until you are told it is safe to so do. Please switch off all mobile phones or turn them to silent. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be filmed, except where there are confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you will be deemed by the Council to have consented to being filmed. By entering this meeting, you are also consenting to being filmed by the Council and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and/or training purposes. The Council, members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. I will now move to the agenda. Acting Head of Governance and Civic Office, Henriette, to report any apologies received.
Thank you, Chair. We have received apologies from Councillor Helen Davis, Councillor Mark Newman and Councillor Lee Parker.
Oh, thank you. We might now move to declaration of interest by councillors. The monitoring officer has granted dispensation for all councillors with regard to the budget papers, because at the end of the day we all pay council tax. Are there any further declarations of interest? No, moving on. I move to paper BC 2439 to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 21st of January, and this is for accuracy only. Are there any issues with accuracy? Councillor Glover.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Councillor Clover. Page 14, 87.10. Where I queried how many homes would be retrofitted, I did say at that time that it was I felt it was a low bar, and the cabinet member agreed with me that she felt it a low bar as well.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have one amendment. Anything else? Councillor Maybury.
I don't know whether you would like this now or later. But
we're discussing the accuracy of the minutes.
Well, 87.6.
Have you discovered an inaccurate item or reference?
No, but I haven't had a reply.
You've raised the issue.
In the minutes, under 87.6, I asked for the figures of how many properties of a rating below Band C for EPC, and I have not received it.
Okay, so there's an item outstanding from the minutes, but there's no inaccuracy as far as you're concerned. Anybody else with any inaccuracies? No. Are you happy for those amendments to be done and the minutes accepted? Okay, excuse me, I'm choking. Could I have a proposer, please, for the minutes? Councillor Saw and a seconder. Councillor Davis. And by a show of hands, those in favour. Thank you. Okay, that is carried. I now move to BC 2440, announcements from myself and the leader. I refer you to paper BC 2440 for noting, and thank you. I would also like to remind members of the following all-member workshops taking place in relation to the devolution and local government reorganisation. And I would ask that you make a note of these in your diaries, please. On Monday, 3rd of March, workshops are taking place at the Guildhall in Hadley. And this is from 9:30 in the morning till 12:30. And the workshop will be for the local government reorganisation. Then in the afternoon, from 1:30 to 4:30, the workshop will be for devolution. The same is taking place in the mix in Stowmarket on Tuesday the 4th, from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock. The workshop will be for local government reorganisation. And from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m, the workshop will be for devolution. Alongside these workshops, there are virtual town and parish liaison meetings taking place on Wednesday the 5th of March at between 10 o'clock and 12 o'clock. And also on Monday the 10th of March between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. The government launched an 8-week consultation in relation to devolution on the 17th of February in order for Babergh District Council to establish its response to the consultation. An extraordinary council meeting will take place on Monday, the 7th of April, to consider the response to the consultation of the devolution. Members have received calendar invitations to all the meetings mentioned. I now invite Councillor Saw to make her announcements and hopefully stop coughing.
Thank you, Chair. When it comes to setting the budget, I think we can all agree that the current system of local government finance is unsustainable. Without preempting the Cabinet Member for Finance's remarks, our starting point is that there's a total mismatch between funding and need. Successive governments have always taken a short-term focus to local government finance. We are well used to receiving notifications of the funding settlement on the day we break for Christmas, an unfortunate Christmas tradition. Christmas this year started with the government taking the Rural Services Delivery Grant away from us, and I'm sure Councillor Ward has much to say on that. There is inadequate consultation and a lack of understanding, particularly when it comes to rural councils like our own. Successive governments have underfunded rural councils, leaving our communities at a disadvantage. Rural residents also pay on average 20% more per head in council tax because we, their local councils, get less government grant. To make matters worse, council services cost more to deliver in rural areas. Residents are spread across large areas, yet are still in need of vital services. Our residents deserve their fair share of the funding pot to ensure functioning and sustainable communities, especially given the cost of living crisis. The government's announcement of multi-year funding settlements is to be welcomed, but not if the funding pot is the same or, as rumoured, smaller. If the government thinks local government reform alone will solve the council funding crisis, then I think they're wrong. I do not believe there is any evidence to suggest that creating larger council structures more remote from residents will deliver better services more cheaply. There is no evidence to suggest that large councils are better councils. What evidence is there for saying that local government reorganisation will deliver efficiency, accountability and streamlined services? Not from Unitary Somerset, where the council leader has just said two-tier areas need to think very carefully before reorganising, and he can't imagine how other areas would reorganise to make way for devolution at the pace set by the government. We want to ensure that all members have the chance to express their views on these important issues. I know we all want to protect and fight for the interests of our residents and their communities. Local democracy needs to be local. We must not break the connection between communities and councillors who live and work within them. We're not against change, and with the other district and borough leaders, we are fully engaged with the process of developing the shape of future local government. But we are determined that any new structures will focus on the needs of local communities and will best serve them now and in the future. So I look forward to hearing your views at the Extraordinary Council meeting and hope as many of you as possible can attend the devolution and LGR workshops. Thank you.
So, are any points of clarification required? Can I move on? Oh dear. To receive notification of petitions in accordance with council procedure rules.
None received, Chair.
Thank you. Any questions by the public in accordance with council procedure rules?
None received.
Thank you. Questions by councillors in accordance with council procedure rules?
None received, Chair.
Thank you. We'll now move to paper BC 2441, 2025 to 2026, General Fund Budget and Medium Term Financial Position, abbreviated to MTFP. Now, I'm going to ask Councillor Ward to introduce this paper and to move the recommendations in the report. As the papers are long and complex, I've decided to grant an extra 5 minutes for Councillor Ward to introduce his report, and will then move around the room to ask the leader of the different groups. Therefore I've allowed 15 minutes for Councillor Ward's introduction. And when we get to the debating stage, I will grant each member, who can only speak once, 5 minutes to get their point across in debate. So, Councillor Ward, will you please introduce your paper?
Thank you, Chair. 2025 General Fund Budget and the Medium-Term Financial Plan. So, like nearly all councils, we have increasing pressures on our budget as funding doesn't keep step with inflation and the demand on our services. We've seen a marked deterioration in the council's finances throughout the current financial year, which will end in a forecast deficit as at Q2 of 1.245 million as against a budget surplus of 132,000. The national economic position is summarised in paragraphs 5.1 to 5.8 of today's report. The economy is still struggling with sluggish growth, but inflation has fallen rapidly over the past year or so, and interest rates are starting to come down, and both of these are welcome news. The state of public finances is, however, not good, with low growth being compounded with growing demand for services. The new government's fiscal plans do include extra taxation for higher levels of public spending, but this is targeted at specific key services. It will mean real-term cuts in unprotected services, of which local government is one, and so funding settlements are expected to remain tight, no different from the policy of the previous government. We do now have the final local government finance settlement, and there will be an overall additional £3.9 billion of core spending power, a 6.8% increase, but 2.2 billion of that is council tax. This is across the sector and assumes that councils will increase council tax by the maximum allowed without referendum. However, most of the increased grant funding will be directed towards those authorities with social care responsibilities and specific targeting of those areas that are considered to have higher levels of deprivation. Our settlement is not good. Yet again, there is only a one-year settlement, and this makes medium to long-term planning both challenging and uncertain. We are expecting comprehensive funding reforms this year, but we don't expect that they will be favourable to rural districts. The government also expects authorities to use their reserves to maintain services and balance budgets. Well, we will be doing that, as I'll talk about later, but this is not a long-term strategy. Reserves can only be used once. Set in the context of all this, budget setting has been even more of a difficult challenge this year, but a huge amount of work has been done, firstly to identify savings, reduce costs, and identify income opportunities, and then through challenges between Cabinet and SLT to ensure that the savings align with our plan for Babergh and its priorities. As usual, the 2025 to 26 budget has taken the Q2 position for 2024 to 25 as its starting point, but with a number of budget items, the employees' budget, grant income from central government, financing costs, interest income, business rates and council tax being forecast from a zero base. The budget summary is shown in Table 1. And although £2.6 million of savings and additional income have been identified, we're still forecasting a deficit of £633,000. The net cost of service, after taking into account income, the use of earmarked reserves, recharges and capital financing costs, is £15.2 million, which is a 7.8% increase. Total funding at 14.6% has only increased by 2.4%, much less than the national average for core spending power. Gross expenditure is £28.7 million, which is a 3.4% increase on the current year, and gross income is £28.1 million, only a 1% increase. Details of these are provided in the charts in paragraph 6.11 and Appendix A. Section 7 of the report details the assumptions we've made around the expenditure items. The largest of these is, of course, our staff budget. And even with the pay award and incremental salary increases and the greatly reduced vacancy management factor, the employee budget is only slightly up on last year, with actual reductions in salaries and pension contributions. Other expenditure assumptions include small increases in major contract costs and capital financing charges. But this budget isn't only about where we can save money and where we can get additional income to bridge the funding gap. This administration has an ambitious action plan that reflects our desire to support and revitalise our communities so that they can meet new challenges. And this does come at a cost, but we must be realistic in what we can achieve with the finances available to us. We have therefore had to reset our priorities and postpone some actions. We will proceed with those that will have the most immediate and beneficial effect, and we have earmarked £150,000 from the reserves for these in this budget. Section 8 of the report details the assumptions we've made around the income budget items. Table 5 shows the forecast income for each service area, and new fees and charges were approved by Cabinet in November. These include those set by government, which we can't control, and also those over which we do have control and for which we continue with our policy of full cost recovery. The total forecast income from fees and charges is £5.3 million, which is an increase of £1.4 million, or 37% on this year. Income from CIFCO's forecasts remain stable, but pooled fund income will be substantially lower this year, mainly due to no longer having the USB fund. The local government funding settlement details are provided in paragraph 8.10, and the biggest blow for us is the unexpected removal of the Rural Services Delivery Grant. We are expecting £1.33 million in core funding grants, a decrease of just under £177,000 from last year. This does include £199,000 partial compensation for the increase in employers' NI contributions. Leaving this out, the real total amount of funding is only £1.21 million. And the largest component of this, New Homes Bonus, is set to be removed entirely next year. I'd just like to draw your attention to a minor error in paragraph 8.10. The seventh bullet should say 838,000, not 290,000 for New Homes Bonus. Details of the new council tax rates are given in paragraphs 8.11 to 8.14. And we are proposing a 2.99% increase, which raises the Band D rate from £188.10 to £193.73 per annum, which is an increase of £5.63. This is equivalent to £3.73 a week, an increase of 11 pence. Following on from last year's change to charging an empty homes premium after 1 year instead of 2, we're now going to include 100% premium for second homes, as agreed last year. Altogether, these measures will provide an additional £403,000 of council tax funding. We will continue to support the most vulnerable with our local council tax reduction scheme, and we have updated the contributions in line with inflation, and the new income bands and contribution rates are shown in paragraph 8.15. We're forecasting a total of £6.1 million from business rates. The individual elements are shown in table 9, and the explanation is given in the following paragraphs. The changes to release and multipliers are listed in paragraph 8.16, and a full reset is still expected in the near future. I want now to talk about the savings we're proposing. These are discussed in section 9. You'll see that we have included savings, cost efficiencies and income of just under £2.6 million, which is in addition to the £540,000 savings in the current year. The savings include the increased service income I've mentioned, and also just over £700,000 of staff-related savings, achieved by reallocating staff time between the districts and reducing the number of vacant posts by absorbing staff vacancies. We're making a number of other cost efficiencies amounting to £278,000, which are summarised in paragraph 9.9, and also budget reductions summarised in paragraph 9.14. But as you'll see from the report, it is increasingly difficult to find additional efficiencies, and most have already been delivered by a successful partnership with Mid-Suffolk in the years that we've been working together. We still need to ensure we balance principles around protecting services for our residents, ensuring equality of service provision and cost for all our communities, stewardship of our environment, and the resilience of our organisation. Paragraph 9.16, just for your information, lists a number of options that we have considered and discounted for the moment. The forecast position for earmarked reserves is shown in Appendix C, and the key movements are listed in paragraph 10.3, including repurposing the council tax and business rates reserve. The reserve movements include the amount needed to fund the forecast deficit for the current year and also the £633,000 for the new year. We have included a provision of £1 million for the reduction in the valuation of the pooled investment funds. And so £1 million of investment income will be transferred into a new pooled investments reserve. The medium-term financial plan showing the forecast position up until 2029 to 30 and the overall strategy are detailed in section 11. The plan is, as usual, a best guess and is based on assumptions regarding government funding and business rates, which could mean a reduction of £3.127 million in 2026 to 27. The plan is forecasting a cumulative budget gap of £14.6 million over the 6 years from 2024 to 25 up until 2029 to 30, which results in the financial resilience reserve being completely depleted in 2027 to 28, meaning that we will not have sufficient reserves to fund future budget gaps. This is a structural problem that must be solved either by reducing the budget or increasing income. A lot of work has gone into identifying efficiencies, savings and income opportunities to balance the budget, but much more needs to be done to achieve this and strengthen the financial resilience of the Council and achieve our main strategic financial aim of becoming self-financing and not reliant on government funding. It's exacerbated by uncertainty about what the government's intentions are. We've had some indication from the recent policy statement, but we do need the detail. In many respects, we can expect the same as with the previous government, although I hope without the interminable delays, as the policy statement does make a commitment to a full package of funding reforms this year. But one thing will be different. The direction of travel is clear, and there will be redistribution of funding towards councils with greater need and lower council tax bases. The capital programme is shown in Appendix D with a summary in paragraph 12.1. We've cut this back very significantly, and we've removed £8.5 million for the schemes listed in paragraph 12.3, and this will save about £500,000 in interest and MRP charges. The total budget is £6.264 million, and the capital financing is shown in Table 14 and Appendix D. Appendix D also shows the projects included in the Capital Ambitions programme. There are no proposals for financing these yet, nor any financing costs included in this budget for them. The Section 25 report you'll find in your appendices. Section 25 of the Local Government Act 2003 requires that the Council, when setting its budget and level of council tax, to take into account a report from its Section 151 officer on the robustness of estimates and adequacy of reserves. This is to ensure that, when deciding on the budget, members are made aware of any issues of risk and uncertainty or any other concerns by the Chief Financial Officer. The local authority is also expected to ensure that its budget provides for a prudent level of reserves to be maintained. The report is provided in Appendix E, and we are required to have regard to this report in approving tonight's budget. Now, I'd like to propose the recommendations in paragraph 3.1 to 3.6. Firstly, to approve the 2025-26 General Fund budget, the 2.99% council tax increase, and the adjustments to the 100% local council tax reduction working age scheme. Secondly, to note the medium-term forecast and the Section 25 report. And to assist me in any questions arising, we have Melissa, Jack and Alistair here with us this evening. As always, I'm conscious that there will be a lot of complexities and technical matters within the report and also the appendices, but between us, I'm sure we'll be able to clarify any issues arising. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Saw. Now, I'm going to deviate a little bit and move around the room, and I'll start with questions from Councillor Holt. Do you have any questions?
Well, a statement, that's right. Response to Councillor Ward.
A question?
It's more a response to the statement of Councillor Ward.
Well, is that not part of debate?
I'll let you decide. I thought I would have the opportunity to respond to the initial
Okay, I'll
statement.
come back to you while I go around the room. Councillor Jameson, do you have any questions?
Not at the moment, no. We'll do, but okay.
Okay, Councillor Busby, do you have any questions at this point?
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Owen, do you have any questions at this point?
Just one.
Just one. Okay, carry on.
Sorry, I have to stand up. The empty homes grant, you're removing that due to low historic take-up. Or why are you removing it? Why can't you just leave it on there? Simple question.
There's no need to include it in the capital programme, so we're removing it this year.
Questions from any member? Councillor Clover?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Page 31, we've got the total employee costs of 12,369, but in a previous document that we've seen, the total salary costs are some 17.85 million. Could you just confirm that that is the total figure? It might be that there's HRA budgets to be considered in this.
Councillor Clover, I'm not sure what number you're referring to, but these are the employee costs for the general fund. If you've seen another figure that's included HRA, it's quite possible, but without knowing what you've seen and what you've got, that I can't comment any further.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to ask about employee costs as well. On page 30, chart 4 shows the largest proportion of expenditures being employees, 43%. Could you please tell us how this figure compares to previous years' budgets? Thank you.
Yes, I can. Our employee costs have obviously increased over the years. We have pay rises, national insurance contributions, etc., which have added to our employee costs. And also, being the largest contribution of our budget, you'd expect employees to be a significant amount. We are a people-based organisation, and so consequently, staff are the biggest contribution to our budget. But 43% this year, and last year, actually, was 50%. The year before, 51%. So, and it does vary in that region of the upper 40s, around about 50. But this year, we've got it down to the lowest I think it's been in my recollection.
Councillor Carruthers?
Thank you, Chair. With regard to the funding Council receives from the government, by how much has this declined over the last 10 years? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carruthers. By a huge amount is the answer, but specifically, let me give you some numbers. The first budget I remember, I became a councillor in 2015, first budget 2015 to 2016, we had new homes bonus and revenue support grant, £3.248 million. That declined the following year. There were different grants, there's new homes bonus, the RSG, and new rural service delivery grant, transition grant. That was only just over £3 million, so that had gone down by over 200,000. In 2024 to 25, the current year, we have new homes bonus, revenue support grant, rural service delivery grant, funding guarantee, services grant of £1.5 million. And now, of course, as I've said, we've lost the rural service delivery grant, and we've got a total, including the national insurance compensation, of only £1.33 million. So over that 10-year period, we're down by almost £2 million per annum. A huge amount.
Thank you.
Councillor Potter?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Could we look at Table 2, page 31, on employee costs breakdown, and see there that on 24-25 on agency staff, you've seen a significant drop of 103 on there from budget 24-25 to 25-26. Why is such a sharp fall in agency staff? Could that be explained?
We have a policy of trying to reduce our agency spend as much as possible. So this is in line with that trend and desire to do that, and to just include or just rely on our own direct employees.
Councillor Holt?
Councillor Ward mentions the staff in numbers. He's quite pleased that the percentage has come down, but that is mainly due to the increase in expenditure. And certainly the capital funding is partly to do with that. I mean, the capital expenditure has gone up by 4 million this year. If you actually put the wages into that previous capital expenditure, you'll get a higher percentage than the 43%. So it's not all good news on that front. Do you agree?
No, I don't. As I've explained, we've driven out over £700,000 from our employees' budget. It's on the decline in real numbers and in percentage of our total gross expenditure.
Councillor Holt? As many questions, yes, you've got it.
29, service expenditure. Previously we budgeted 1.192, the forecast was 2.2 for 24-25, and it's 1.772 for 25-26. Why have these risen so sharply when we've given up a floor? And could you confirm what actually is made up of the 1.772 million?
I'm going to have to ask an expert to answer that one, I'm afraid.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think this question has come up before at review and scrutiny as well. It is a significant hike in premises costs. The main reason for that is the way that we've accounted for the guaranteed rent scheme. So previously we weren't budgeting for the correct income and expenditure. We've now inflated both of those sides. So what you're seeing on the premises budget is an increase, but if you look at the rental income, you'll see an increase that offsets that. So that's about 400k of that increase. We've also got an increase in our insurance premiums as well related to property. That was just over 100k. And then I think the other one is business rates as well. So that's not all Endeavour House. There's lots of other costs in there as well.
Could I ask the officer perhaps emails all members with a breakdown fully of those figures so that we can have them to look at after the meeting?
O'Reilly, did I see your hand fluttering upwards?
I mean, it was poised, and I appreciate your perception. Can I just turn people, please, to begin with, to page 41? And whilst we're looking for that page, I'd like to congratulate everybody here, you know, the executive councillors, for want of a better word, and the staff for the comprehensive details we're given here. It gets more and more interesting every year, more and more detail, and it reflects the work that's been done. Now, if we look at page 41, about 2/3 down under place, and the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the fifth line down, we say historical inconsistencies across the district means that in 1.47 some places residents may be paying whatever, and couldn't quite work out the significance of the 1.47. So any enlightenment would be welcome.
Looks like a typo to me, Councillor Riley. I would ignore it.
Well, no.
Councillor Holt?
We're back again. Sorry, no. So thank you, Councillor Ward. I appreciate that honesty, coming for you. Which prompts us to the next question is, what else in here can I ignore?
The rest of this report is entirely accurate and without any mistakes. Sorry for that one. You'll appreciate that there's been a lot of work done in this report, a lot of revisions. It's been proofread by a number of people, including myself. Sorry about that one.
As I say, I appreciate it. A lot of people have had input into this, and so that's why I was surprised. I found it there. Next one is an easy question. Page 31. What is a vacancy management factor, and why has it gone down by half?
We typically have, in past years, have had a factor of about 5%, which is vacant positions which don't get filled, and we decided at this point that there's not really a need to maintain it at that level. We've reduced it down to 3%, so it's a smaller amount. So consequently, we've shown this change here.
Right, great. Yeah, thank you. So that would explain then why we did not keep the positions of a head of climate and nature recovery open for much later, why we have, when we were recruiting in November, a director of place instead of running along on the usual inertia, why we are still recruiting for overhead places, people who have no direct contact with our taxpayers.
Answer that question.
I'm not sure entirely. I might get the chief executive to help me out here at some point, but we will always need to recruit certain positions where we can't work without them. The director of place is a senior role that we do need at some point to fill, because there is a huge vacancy in our senior leadership team there. So these are a role like that is a necessary role and will have to be filled somehow at some point. But Chief Executive, can you try and provide a bit more clarity on that?
I'm not sure there's a significant amount I can add to what Councillor Ward has already said, but in essence, yes, there are roles within the organisation that we believe are essential in order to deliver the functions that you ask us to deliver, and there are equally roles in the organisation that are critical in order to function as an organisation. So I don't think anyone, and I forget the language that was used by the councillor, but I don't think anyone is drifting as such. Some of those roles are harder to recruit than others because we're in a competitive market. And I'm sure the introduction of local government reorganisation and devolution is going to make that trickier to recruit into this sector at the moment, because as you can see, there may well be a temptation not to join local government rather than to join it at a time of significant change. Nonetheless, we will, as Councillor Ward has highlighted, continue to try and recruit those roles as much as possible. But as you had seen, as you highlighted yourself, we are anticipating fewer vacancies, hence the reduction in the vacancy management factor.
Councillor Jameson's been waiting. So you can draw breath, Councillor Riley, and I'll come back to you.
On page 48, we're saying the assumptions, based on the assumptions you're making, we could be looking at losses of over £3 million going into next year. Seeing we've only made £2.6 million savings this year, what does the forthcoming year hold for us in terms of with that kind of loss going into next year?
Those are, that £3 million, which I mentioned in my introduction, is our best guess assumption in terms of the reduction in government funding. in terms of direct grants from government plus business rates. Should there be a business rates reset, and we could lose up to 50% of the business rates growth that we've kept up until now. We have no idea how the local government funding will pan out this year. That number is, as I said, best guess at the moment. It could well change, and I hope it does change during the year. But nonetheless, there is a lot of work that we've got to do next year, well, in the forthcoming year and the subsequent years, because, as I mentioned, we've got that huge medium-term financial deficit over the 6-year period, and we have to address that.
I have Councillor Clover, then Beer, then Maybury, then Riley.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah. Page 42, 9.8, discretionary services. Here we have a cursory, about 7 lines, on the Cabinet's decision that there's no defunding anywhere about these discretionary services. I'd really like to see the evidence of this examination. Could you provide that evidence of, surely it's such a big subject and savings must be able to be made. Could we please see the evidence of the examination of why you've decided not to defund any discretionary services whatsoever?
This was a decision made in various meetings and briefings of the Cabinet. We felt that given the need to help our residents and our communities, that there weren't any discretionary services that we currently provide that really we should not be providing in future. It's a policy decision. You may disagree with it, that's fine. But we're here as the Cabinet, and we've made that decision that we don't want to defund any of those discretionary services. They are those services that our communities really need and value above all else. They make a real difference to our communities. So we decided not to. After all, it's what we're here to do.
Clover.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So we can't see the evidence.
Councillor Beer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My question's on page 35, serviced areas, car parking. Well, you really didn't expect to go without a question. It says budget 24-25, 214,000. Are you expecting to get £1,166,000 in for the whole year for our council car park charges?
Yes, we are, and over the past month or so, since new parking tariffs were introduced, the income is broadly in line with our expectations over the initial period. So I have no reason to believe that that number is not achievable.
Just a quick follow-on from that. Can you tell us what that figure was for the month, roughly? You know, if you've got it.
I don't have it at the moment, but I can get it for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Maybury.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I was absolutely delighted to hear that Councillor Ward is really pleased that there are no further mistakes in the paperwork. Oh, exactly. No, this is the statement. Did Councillor Ward realise page 44, the last bullet point, e.g. use of CAB? Citizens Advice changed their name in 2003, so you are a little behind. Did you realise that?
Yes, I did.
Thank you. Now I'll go to Councillor Riley and then to Councillor Holt.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Actually, can I book myself for another 2 questions? First one's quite easy, actually. We know, obviously, on page 34... Page 34, we're talking about the loss, expected loss on Babergh Growth Limited and, by definition, Corks Lane. When do we expect the external auditor to give us a view as to how we account for this loss.
I think I'll have to ask Melissa for that one. Have we got an expected date yet? No, I didn't think so. Yeah, please, yeah.
Yeah, so we are actually engaging with the auditors on the 24-25 audit, so we are expecting to have that discussion about that as that audit progresses.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. When we go to page 29, table 1, service expenditure, and we appear to jump our figures all over. Current year's budget, 1.1 million. Forecast in quarter 2, we're going to be 2.2 million. Our budget for the year to come is 1.7 million. These figures appear to be all over the place, but can we have an opinion as to why the premises cost has gone up by almost 50% on the year?
That question was answered about 5 minutes ago.
I'm sorry?
The question was answered in terms of the way that the premises budget has been recalculated. The Section 151 officer answered that in response to Councillor Holt's question.
Madam Chairman. Thank you. Where I sit here, I couldn't quite hear the answer. I'll catch up when I look at it next time, all right? There's a fundamental problem with people answering questions from here is we are not speaking to the microphone. We speak over to the chair, which we should be speaking to, but more often we actually speak to the person who asked the question. And in fact, the qualities of the tones here means that quite often the answer is unintelligible. But we'll catch up later on. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Riley. Now I'll go to Councillor Holt and then to Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Part of the question has already been answered with Melissa's response, but re the refinancing, will she let all members know when you have clarification of the external auditor's recommendation? Thank you. That was a yes. Another question. There is an assumption, as Councillor Ward has said, that the parking income would be 1.1 million. Has a contingency been built in? Should it not bring in the expected revenue? And I appreciate he said he will share the 1 month figures, but I think it's probably more worthwhile to perhaps come to full council in May, I know it's our annual meeting, and perhaps share the first quarter's figures, which I feel will be a more representative target, a number of how the parking charges have been implemented, are being supported or not.
Yeah, we can do that, but it is going to overview and scrutiny, I think, in June. Both overview and scrutiny will certainly have an opportunity to look at and review the progress of the new tariffs.
Page 38, 8.6. Could you explain the additional 1 million loss mentioned in 8.6, please?
Yes, this is the current valuation of the remaining pooled funds that we have. They're currently valued at £1 million lower than their purchase price, which was about 8, 9, 10 years ago. We have to make that provision now. That will change as the valuation changes, but we're putting in the money in a reserve as we've been instructed to do to cover that loss in valuation. However, I will say that with the interest received from those pooled investments over the intervening years, they have still been beneficial. We're several £100,000 up when you combine value plus interest payments.
Page
I'll pick you up after Councillor Smith.
Page 50, 12.2. What is the life expectancy of Boreham Gate House, and how will the repairs proposed extend its life?
I'll have to provide that information for you after this meeting.
Yep. How long has this authority been paying the 26% contribution to employees' salaries, or pensions, I should say? And what does that equate to for this year ending 24-25?
The pension contributions you'll have seen in the table in the report. I'll just get it back to draw it to your attention. If you just bear with me. Yeah, it's in table 2 on page 31, is the actual amount that we're paying. So for the forthcoming year, that's 2.3 million, just so 2.3 million. In terms of your comment about how long we've been paying that, that would be since the last valuation of the pension fund. Our pension fund contributions are set, and at various intervals, at three-yearly, triennial intervals, there are revaluations of the pension fund when we can make decisions as to whether to change those pension contributions. But you will see, if you look at that number in that table and work it out in terms of our gross expenditure, the amount we spend on pensions only accounts for 8% of our budget.
I don't think I've asked this one. Page 30. Well, I'd have trouble keeping note of the ones I've got here. Page 35, table 5. Could you explain what makes up the increased planning and park and enforcement change, please, the charges?
Certainly, we are anticipating an increase in planning fee income. The planning fees have been increased. The government's allowed us to increase those. There's a new upper limit on planning fee income. We are expecting more planning applications coming in. That will account for the majority of that increase.
Okay, come back. What is the enforcement section then?
I'll have to get that breakdown for you later.
Okay, can I move on now? Councillor Holt, any more questions? For the time being, thank you very much. Councillor Smith. Sorry you've had a long wait.
Thank you, Chair. It's not a problem. Thank you, Councillor Holt. On page 34, paragraph 7.18, it mentions a reset of Council's priorities and additional budget items totalling to £150,000, as you mentioned in your introduction. Could you tell me what elements of the action plan we're going to be able to deliver with that £150,000, please?
Yes, obviously the first thing that we are in the process of delivering is our local listed building consent order. There's been money allocated to that. The proposal to include design considerations in planning, the carbon reduction management plan, the biodiversity action plan and nature recovery plan, greater support for neighbourhood plans as well, and also support for community-led housing.
Councillor Smith, do you have any other question on that? No, thank you very much. Councillor Beer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My question was on plan, and I think you may have answered most of it to the previous question from Councillor Holt. But what I was interested in, and I'm sure I saw it, I can't find it, is the plan and application fees for this year, if you've got any idea what the amounts are, because I'm assuming that they didn't meet the expectation that we thought we were going to get in, because there has been a downturn in planning applications. And what is the figure for next year?
You mean the total income from planning applications?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll have to get you that later.
Thank you very much.
Anything else? Any more questions, or can we move to debate? Okay, I'll start as I did with the questions. Councillor Holt, would you like to open the debate, or do you wish to wait till the end?
So I've got to say, it's fine. This budget is a repeat of what we're used to from Councillor Ward, decision. And in my view, it does not represent value for money for our residents of Babergh. To keep spending money you haven't got and expect the residents of Babergh to keep dipping into their pocket year on year just to pay for the shortfalls within the budget is not good monetary policy. A pound is a pound. You can't keep spending £1.50 for every pound you have available. Hard decisions should have been taken and haven't. You can't afford, for example, or I can't, go on holiday, go out for meals, digital TV, go to the cinema. These are all things our residents have to decide week in, week out. If you can't afford it, you simply don't do it. Yet again, this year, you expect them to put their hand in their pockets and pay more because you won't take those difficult decisions. We're all aware and will hear about shortfall in funding by consecutive governments, but each year we spend beyond our means again and again. The income from the proposed increases in fees and charges for the next financial year is set to bring in, as you said, 1.42 million. That's just over 37% increase. This in turn has put pressure on town and parish councils, as well as businesses who have to pass on or absorb these increased charges. A perfect example is dog poo bins, up 20% from £69 to 83 per bin. Councillor Wood knows full well these increases will be added to town and parish council precept, which is just another stealth way of taxing our residents beyond the 2.99% proposed council tax increase. There's no doubt our staff are what makes the council operate, and without them we couldn't exist. However, this must have a measure of control, accountability, and be set against affordability. One example is giving staff an extra day's holiday in Babergh basically cost us £69,000 in lost productivity. That's all well and good if you can afford it, but in business, if you have budget concerns, this would never happen. Analysis by the Times recently shows that almost £1 in every 4 raised in council tax is spent on staff pensions. This is putting huge pressure on our finances. The decisions you have taken have ended up costing residents £3 million in losses at Corks Lane in Hadley, which taxpayers will likely be paying off over 30 plus years, though it could be sooner. We're waiting to hear. The visualised corporate plan, which sets out 3 strategic priorities in terms of this administration, revitalised... Where it's gone? Get there. It's only trouble when you do what steers. Steers. Oh my God, I can read. We're here. Revitalised, improved environment. Have I got that right? Thriving economy and resilient communities are all uncosted. So, we are soon to start the 3rd year of the administration. So what are the cost of the priorities? You mentioned them earlier about how you didn't want to cut anything and you've allowed some money for it, but we still haven't got a costing for what your strategic priorities are. We haven't been told. A thriving economy, well, that's rather ironic when imposing more taxes and increased charges on our residents and businesses, in addition to those imposed by Rachel from Accounts. It looks as though she may have been speaking to John from IT. Wardomics does not and has not worked. It's just increasing the tax burden on our residents. I touched on making hard decisions earlier. When you look at the statutory services we have to provide, they cost £11.8 million per year. Compared to the non-statutory services, ones we don't have to provide, which cost 24.6. Now, I'm not saying for one moment they don't deliver benefits to our residents, they do. But put bluntly, We can't afford them all. Yet Councillor Ward and this administration shies away from making these tough and difficult decisions. I see in page 42, 9.7 and 9.8, you've tried to preempt and address this issue. But once again, you've dodged, or it's one again you've dodged for years. In summing up, this budget is a status quo. Simply you are spending beyond your means, just taxing our residents, our businesses. Trying to charge your way out of a financial position is not the prudent way to sort the problem out. Taking tough and difficult decisions is what needs to be done, and this administration either has its head buried in the sand or hasn't got the mettle to take the tough decisions. Thank you.
To enter the debate.
Yes, I haven't got anything as comprehensive as Councillor Holt. They've obviously prepared something much earlier. As a Green councillor, we are often reminded by our friends on the other side of the room that we are crap at economy. Sorry for the language. Rubbish at economy. And I'm not going to dispute that on my part, for me. However, I mean, I would remind them that it was their administration that set up the selling of Corks Lane and Babergh, so perhaps they're not always that good. We could, as a council, just go with the statutory services, as Councillor Holt suggests, and start cutting back on all our discretionary services. The thing that's important to me and to members here is to improving the lives of our residents. We don't want to put up prices. We talk about residents as if they're something different from us. But when we put up prices, when we put up fees, when we put up council tax, it affects everyone in this room as much as it does our friends and family, neighbours. So it's not something that is done freely. And things that make people's lives better is the discretionary services. People won't be happy if we start closing down leisure centres. They won't be happy if we get rid of our planning enforcement team and start cutting back on the funding we give them. These are things that improve the lives of our residents and make things better. Yes, we can't spend freely, I understand that. But we can't just go statutory service like some people may want to. It wouldn't be, it would make things worse. It is difficult to, we have got difficult times ahead, and the budget is going to be hard. It's going to get harder as well. So, yeah, we will have to make some hard decisions going forward, but I can't agree with cutting back on the services, all the services that we need to. We have to make life, improve life for our residents.
Councillor Busby, do you wish to make any statement in the debate?
It seems rude not to, really, doesn't it? In response to Michael's questions and concerns about our budget, I mean, I think if we were in total control over our own finances, I think we would be in a far healthier position. It's not just our finances that we're not in control over, it's our destiny as well. You know very well that over the last 12 months or so, we've been targeted with increasing the number of houses that we have to build, and we have to re-look at our local plan. Our waste collection is going to change. We're going to be collecting food, we're going to be collecting alternative weeks, whatever. We need to buy new vehicles, we need to look for a new depot. Our housing stock needs major repairs, we know that. We're still trying to deal with climate change. We've now been thrown devolution, local government review. All of these things cost money because it absorbs resources. It ties up people, and people, as we know, cost. We haven't chosen to go down this route. We are forced to do it by the government. So I think we do pretty well. We charge our households £3.50 something a week. Personally, I think it's probably worth a fiver, even just to collect the bins. So I think they do pretty well. We've put the price up 11 pence per week, 2.99. It's probably one of the lowest increases of any organisation over the last 12 months. So, yes, I think we could do better, possibly. I think also with the non-statutory activities that we do try and charge for most of them. We do try and make them cost-effective. And a lot of the things that we're talking about trying to provide in the future will really depend on whether we get grants or not to do it. Because, again, we can't write our own cheques. So it's a very difficult position. I understand where you're coming from, but I think in this instance you're misguided. Thank you.
Do you wish to? No. Thank you. Councillor Beer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Well, I just wanted to respond to Councillor Jameson, and I do believe that you're a very genuine and concerned person, and you're quite right. Any council tax increases does affect you and I and the majority of people in this room. But there is a lot of people out there, which I'm sure you know as well as I do, who are struggling, who can't find the means to get to the ends. And any increase, however small it may be, on top of all the other increases, become a collective great amount. And at some point, we've got to stop this. And I've said over the years many times that this isn't the answer to our ways to get out of problems, is just to increase council tax on people. It's the wrong course of action, and I will not be supporting this budget on that particular point. Thank you very much.
Councillor Busby, you've already spoken once. This is debate. You can only speak.
You can say we can speak more. This is just a question, actually, to Councillor Beer. If I could just ask you.
No, I'm sorry. I'm being advised no. We are in debate now.
What is a debate?
You said a question.
Well,
and you've already spoken in debate.
I thought you said you were going to let us speak more than once.
No, you can't. You can only speak once. Councillor Clover?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Look, we do support the officers and the roles they carry out. However, what we need to understand here is that in the last 5 years, the salaries have gone up from 9.8 million in 2020 to 17.85 in 2025. This is an increase of 82%. Now, over the same period, full-time equivalent numbers have risen from 241 to 323, an increase of 34%. So, where are we? Well, we know that the reserves are going to run out in 3 to 4 years' time. So the truth is we're living beyond our means, and we have to adjust our cloth accordingly. You know, any business would do this. What we cannot do is keep dipping our hands into the pockets of our residents, expecting them to bail us out, simply because we are failing to manage our rising costs. It cannot be right that the point is here is if we don't control our costs, it's the residents that are going to have to pay. And I accept your point, Councillor Jameson, we're all residents as well, but that's the fact. We've got to manage this business properly, and we're living beyond our means. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Saw, then Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like to draw your attention to a consultation that's recently been publicised about local government finance, which I think we would all find quite instructive. One of the stats that certainly struck me was that smaller district councils have to find over 800 million by 2026-27, equivalent to 5 million per authority, but more than double what counties, metropolitan districts and unitaries require as a proportion of their budget. The method for calculating grants, which used to be revised annually, has not been fully updated since 2013 to 2014. Local government has very limited control over the drivers of its expenditure. Of course we can make policy changes, and we have done, and we are likely to have to do more. And we are quite prepared to do more. But we cannot significantly influence drivers of expenditure such as inflation, central government policy, demography, and population change. Now, I take the point about discretionary spending, but it is also true that we are partnering with a whole range of voluntary organisations that depend on us for a proportion of their funding. For example, as Councillor Maybury has pointed out, Citizens' Advice. Citizens' Advice would not be able to operate to the extent they do, and with the rise in people actually coming to them with multiple problems, if we did not fund them. And we are going to continue to fund them. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Davis?
Yeah, thank you. This has been a really tough budget. We know that. We're in dire straits, and we know that. But it hasn't been helped by 10 years, more than a decade of underfunding from central government that you guys support, and it doesn't help. You can come to the cabinet meetings. You can say, listen, we've got this idea about making money. You fight us against the decisions, the tough decisions we have made. Yeah, the officers have got a really difficult job trying to balance the books. We, as a cabinet, try to help them as much as possible, but we're open to ideas. If you wanted to come to a cabinet meeting, you wouldn't be asking half these questions because you'd know the answers. You would know why we've had to go through this, all of the decisions we have. You'll know why we had to cut down on the subsidies, and it's still subsidy for the car parking charges. You'd know. Come along to the cabinet, put forward your ideas for the next budget, and we'll listen and we'll take it on board, and the officers will listen and take it on board. You know, Councillor Beale, I can't remember the last time you actually voted for a Babergh budget, but you voted for the Suffolk County Council. You passed that, and sorry, can I finish?
Councillor Beale, will you please sit down? You have spoken. Do not.
Thank you. Check the records.
Do you wish to leave the room?
No, he doesn't.
I am chairing this meeting, not you. I decide what is done, not you.
Madam Chair, can you please calm down, because this is getting out of hand.
Ooh. He's not the chair.
I'll not sit down until you've left the room.
Yeah, fine, I'll go as well.
No more. No more. Councillor Beale, no more. You know that when I stand, you members have to stay quiet and not speak. And that applies to those sitting down. Councillor McCraw.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Point of order I'd like to make, please, is that I would ask that Conservative councillors not be the only people who can be attacked viciously with impunity in this chamber, which seems to happen all the time, and there's any time we're attacked, people don't get shouted down or told to sit down or to shut up. It seems as though that the only time people are shouted down and told to sit down are the people on this side who are attacked by people on that side. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Okay, I hear you. I hear your point of order, and it's noted. Councillor Davis, had you finished your statement?
No, Madam Chair, but I abided by the rules and sat down and stayed quiet when you stood up.
Thank you for
the
that.
points I'd like to make, and the invitation to attend Cabinet is not just for the Conservative members. Other members do come along and they listen and they contribute, and they're more than welcome to do that. That allows healthy debate and it gives us all ideas. Councillor Clover, you're a clever man and you'd be more than welcome to come along and offer your opinions, as would all the other members. Yeah, so I appreciate it's difficult, but you can see it online as well and air your views and get in touch with us Cabinet members. We're always ready to listen. But the point that I'm trying to make is it's tough. We know it's tough, but we have to stay united as a council to support our residents in the difficult time. And as Councillor Saw and Councillor Ward have made clear, we're not the only ones that have to increase. Police and Crime Commissioner, County Council, and the Senate, all of those provisions have to be made, plus a plethora of other increases that go onto our residents. We're well aware of that. We're well aware of that. But we care, and we will carry on doing the very best we can. And if that means having to charge for discretionary services, for having to make those difficult choices, which we do, and we have done, and okay, not everybody likes them, but this budget is down to a hell of a lot of hard work, and I commend it, and I will be backing it, obviously, and I commend the officers for putting it together, and for Councillor Ward for presenting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Register, and then Councillor McCraw.
I will try and make this
and then Councillor Hurren.
I'll try and make this a bit lighter. So after 14 years of central government economic disaster, I'm afraid there's only 2 members of that party here, but we hoped a new Labour government would have refunded local government, but that hasn't happened, and of course they've kept a preposterous council tax system which nobody actually likes. It doesn't work when a person in a 2-up, 2-down in Babergh can pay the same council tax as a person in a very large mansion in Kensington. It's clearly a nonsense. But we have to scrabble around for funding, as Councillor Davis just beautifully outlined, and as this budget shows. So I've got a suggestion. You want to get rid of discretionary services. How about let's get rid of car parking? So we close all our Babergh car parks, stop having to pay for maintaining them. That's good. We suddenly got lots of brownfield land which we can build houses on in town centres. Solves the £3 million houses problem in a trice. And and there's no discretionary costing, so I'm sure it would end up being positive in our budget.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McCraw.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a bit taken aback with Councillor Register making such a suggestion. So I have a strong feeling that wouldn't go down well with anybody. So I'm assuming you were being satirical. So Councillor Davis has already said this is the toughest budget of any I can remember. I've been here as long as Councillor Ward. I love the term wardonomics. I think that's one to put down in the books. I'm sure he'll be taking that home round his parishes and telling them that it's now wardonomics. Look, when we look at these budgets every year, and every year this comes up from the opposition, I'm always reminded of the fact, by the way, the opposition were part of previous administrations who did very similar things for the same reasons. Whether they were part of the cabinet or not, they supported the party then in power or the party which was in coalition. I and John were both in coalition with Conservative members. And what's more, we managed to make it work. We managed to get through the job each year. Now, there's been talk today about people being asked to dip into their pocket. I always think when we look at the budget, we look at the summary, if you like, 2 charts on page 30. Charts 4 and 5, the first showing our budgeted gross expenditure, and the second, budgeted gross income. That's it. That's your budget in a nutshell. Well, 2 nutshells. And I love a pie chart, as we all know. And there's a couple of things I would note here. Far from being asked to dip into the pocket, residents, that's ordinary residents in their houses, and whatever council tax band they pay, well, the income of our council tax is actually only a quarter of our income. The other quarter perhaps might be made up with business rates, which are actually set at a national level by the Valuation Office Agency. A small amount of government grants, it appears increasingly less. Certain number of grants and contributions come into it. So more than about half could be ascribed to the local community, but it's only a quarter to direct residents. Now, if you look at the mention was made of the fees and charges that we're building those up. The whole principle, if anybody had attended the meeting where we agreed this year's fees and charges, was to make those in line with cost recovery. And that's what we've done. In fact, we're still not recovering cost fully, poo bins being one example, where we've still got a wee bit to go. Interesting here, if you look at the sales fees and charges percentage, that's 19% of our income. And if you look at the supplies and services that we provide, that's 19% of our expenditure. Now, obviously, there's some crossover here, but I find that an interesting coincidence and an indicator that costs are being married to the charges. That's basically what it is. We've reduced staff costs, particularly in recent years. Now, making a comparison, Councillor Clover, with 8 years ago or 6 years ago, a time, by the way, in which Conservatives were involved in the administration, seems to me a little bit cherry-picking your timescale. We're looking at 1 year at the moment, and that's all we can do. Somebody suggested the problems with discretionary services. There was a question about 150k of various things that we were doing. They were all discretionary, by the way. It was a great long list, and I thought, blimey, that's a lot for a mere 150,000. So all in all, I'm coming down to this. This needs to be supported. 11p a week. Another council in Suffolk, which may have some representation normally within this chamber, put their council tax up by £1.51 a week, just recently. Whoever voted for it is neither here nor there. It was the administration at Suffolk County Council who voted for it. They are the ones who carry the can for that one. I don't blame them. We do exactly the same thing in their situation because there's a reality here. We need to balance a budget. It's a shame we have to borrow from our reserves. Had the government not dumped the Rural Services Delivery Grant just before Christmas, absolute dumped it, that figure would have been half. Instead of being 2% of our income, it would have been 1%. £1.51 a week. SCC, 13.75 times as much. Now, frankly, as I said, I don't blame them. This is a budget we have to pass, and we'll have to pass something similar next year and the year after. As long as this council exists, we have a responsibility to balance the budget. It's one of our prime functions. So I shall be supporting this, and I ask everybody to do the same.
Thank you, Chairman. The voice of reason, maybe, I hope so. The question here is mainly, are we good value for money? And yes, for a £5 a week on a Bandy property, probably a bit lower. Yes, I'm being signalled. I think it's probably about 4.56, but who's to argue about 44 pence? We are brilliant value for that. We do everything we do that we have to do. We do a lot of what we don't have to do to make our constituents' life a little bit more bearable. We subsidise sports facilities. If people are really destitute, we try and let them in the Kingfisher and such things for free at holiday times. We can't help the national situation. We are a reflection on that. If we were a wealthy country, more money would come from the top down to local government like us, but it's not. 10 years of the last government not only have left us financially bankrupt, it's left us pretty morally bankrupt, and we see the reflection of that possibly here tonight, although I do want to comment on that, but even parish councils, everything is getting a bit more aggressive. It tends to be them and us. We need to unite the communities, and it's important we do that. Well, I hear the words here, we should run things in a business-like manner, but it's hard to do that when you're providing a service for the people as well. So that has to go out the window a bit. We must support this budget. We need to attract our staff. We need to attract good staff and keep them. Otherwise, we really are in the mire. That would be quite dreadful. So I think we just have to all get behind this budget, back it, keep trying to get more money in to survive. That's all we're doing is surviving. And thank God we've got people good enough to do that. So we just need to get behind what we do as well as we can for as long as we can. And for God's sake, stop squabbling. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Horan. Councillor Rees, yes, you haven't entered the debate.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. There are just a couple of points here. First of all, Councillor Davis brought up the... sorry, I'll start with Councillor McCraw. One of the things that's been brought up a lot is this difference between discretionary and statutory payment services. And it's worth mentioning that Councillor McCraw was attacking the Conservative government, which of course we know left the economy of this country in a much better situation than the previous government had. But what was happening is that you're attacking, by attacking Suffolk County Council, you have to recognise that, yes, you were attacking Suffolk County Council and the administration thereof, maybe indirectly, implicitly. However, we must recognise that at least 75% of the services they offer or they supply are statutory, just that, statutory services. And so they have even less leeway. The point that Councillor Davis brought up about our attendance at cabinet meetings, yes, we know that we're allowed to attend cabinet meetings, and sometimes we do when we can, but most of us have other jobs as well. But the point about input into what the cabinet's discussing and what cabinet decides, that's happened anyway. For the last several months, our leader, Councillor Michael Holt, has been discussing and asking questions about the differences between statutory and non-statutory services. And strangely enough, for the first time, Councillor Ward and his colleagues in discussions over the budget and forming this budget have suddenly decided, oh, let's have a look at these options that are facing us. It's never come up before. We feed ideas in somehow anyway, as we did in a meeting earlier on in the year where I remember that Councillor Saw was present, and we discussed some things and we gave some ideas at that meeting. We cooperate, we work when we can with all our colleagues on this council, but quite frankly, the attacks are unwarranted and unfair. And the budgetary setting process is undermined by some of those attacks. I will not be supporting this budget for several reasons, but I'm going to be quiet now. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Councillor Ward, do you wish to add anything?
Thank you, Chair. I do have a short paragraph in summation, but with your indulgence, just before I do, just wanted to respond to some of the points that have been made in debate. Councillor Clover talked about the salary increases over the past 5 or 6 years. What he's forgotten to take into account is that during 2021 to 22, we brought the ID Verdi public realm contract back in-house, which immediately increased our salary bill, but there was a corresponding reduction in contract costs. Councillor Holt said we keep expecting residents to pay. Well, actually, no, we don't. The government does, though, the government and the previous government. Both governments have based their funding assumptions on the maximum council tax increase without referendum. But just as some quick numbers here. Our council tax is just over 25% of our budget. In 2018 to 2019, it was 30.5%. It's come down as a proportion. The business about giving staff an extra day off at Christmas, well, it's a bit churlish to bring that up. Our staff work very, very hard, and most, probably all of them, will have made up that time through working long hours anyway. So I have no qualms about that decision. I think it was excellent. The £1 in every 4 of council tax spent on pensions. Well, that's a deliberate misrepresentation of the numbers and massaging of the numbers, which we have seen in the Daily Mail and also, of course, from the Taxpayers Alliance, an organisation that we know is hostile to local government. As I mentioned earlier, our staff costs are 8% of our budget. That's the number that we need to concentrate on. Business charges, again, a central government with business rates and its landlords with rents. We have little influence over the charges that businesses face. And, of course, Councillor Holt mentioned that we have uncosted priorities. We have costed them, and we have discussed some of those priorities and their costs this evening. But I do want to spend a bit of time, council tax that Councillor Beer referred to, and about struggling residents. Well, we have the local council tax reduction scheme, which protects those residents that are most in need of help. But I just want to just provide you with some further information which I have here, because I know that we would all agree with Councillor Beer that keeping council tax as low as possible is desirable, but a refusal to support any increase ever is dogma rather than a realistic budget policy. But in 2019 to 2020, Babergh's council tax was £2.18 a year lower than Mid-Suffolk's. For the forthcoming year, it'll be £18.70 higher. Now, there are several reasons for this. Some are outside our control, and others are within it. Those outside the control, there's been much more house building in Mid-Suffolk, and so the council has benefited from an increasing tax base and, more importantly, from a lot more new homes bonus. Up to the end of the current financial year, Mid-Suffolk has received £15.1 million of new homes bonus, nearly all of which has gone into balancing their reserves, while we have received just £9 million, nearly all of which has gone into balancing the budget. Business rates are also much higher in Mid-Suffolk. Baseline rates 2.5 million, Section 31 grants 4.7 million, and now they've got the Freeport business rates, compared with ours with baseline at 1.5 million and Section 31 at 3 million. And of course, this year they're also benefiting from their huge dividend payment for Gateway 14. But there are two contributing factors that are a direct result of policy decisions by an earlier Babergh administration. Now, Mid-Suffolk has charged for short-term parking for many years. In 2016, the Conservative group commissioned and produced a paper that recommended short-term parking. They got cold feet when it came to implementation, not wanting to take difficult decisions. That has cost us, probably in the intervening years, about £5 million. In 2018, we had a golden opportunity to create a single council with Mid-Suffolk. Everything was in place for this, but in an obsession with being alone following the Brexit vote, the Conservatives did a U-turn on a policy that they had for many years. Their colleagues in Mid-Suffolk were both dismayed and disappointed at a decision they just simply could not understand. Now, by now we've had equalised council tax with Mid-Suffolk, and we've also benefited from further savings that a single council would have provided. But of course, it's too late now. We're now likely to be replaced in the next few years. Now, Councillor Beer, his concern for the council taxpayer is therefore risible when set in the context of all of this, when he and many of his colleagues have voted for, and all of them still support policies that have resulted in Babergh's residents paying more council tax than they need to. Councillor Beer, for all his protestations, is no friend of the council taxpayer. So now for my summing paragraph. As I said earlier, providing a balanced budget has been particularly difficult this year due to the severe funding pressures this report identifies. And it has relied on the use of reserves, but it does go a long way to ensuring that Babergh's finances will be built on strong foundations. This budget is a sensible balance of the use of some reserves, some reduction in services, and some increases in fees and charges. What it does do is enable us to continue to invest in those services and projects, the discretionary things that we do, that are valued and make a real difference to the lives of our residents. Local government is about more than just doing the statutory stuff, emptying the bins, planning, licensing. If it were, then what's the point of us here? We will continue to support the health and well-being of our communities, businesses, and the environment. There is still uncertainty, which is reflected in the additional work that must be done to improve our medium-term financial position, work we must still do despite now knowing that Babergh has only another 2 or 3 years left. This budget delivers cautious ambition and safeguarding services with a prudent management of the Council's finances, the very definition of wardonomics.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ward. Now, in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 19.3, immediately after any vote is taken at a budget decision meeting of the Council, the names of councillors who cast a vote for the decision or against the decision, or who abstained from voting, shall be recorded in the minutes of that meeting. I'll now ask the Acting Head of Governance and Civic Office to conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now in progress. Councillor Grandin, may I take your vote, please? 4. 4, thank you. Thank you, members. That is 23 votes for and 2 abstentions. So that's carried.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, pardon, I do apologise. It's 23 votes for and 2 votes against. That's carried.
Okay. Thank you. However, it's carried.
Yes.
Thank you. I'd now like to invite Councillor Ward to introduce paper BC 2442 and to move the recommendations in the report. I won't repeat the recommendations, everybody can see them. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to speak for as long.
Good.
Yeah, so I'd like to introduce the report BC 2442, the 2025-26 Housing Revenue Account Budget. Just briefly, Table 2A and paragraph 4.16 does show the budget summary comparing 2025-26 with the 2024-25 budget. A revised comparison with the latest Q2 forecast is provided in Table 2B. We are forecasting a deficit of just under £8.4 million, but as with the current year, there are significant one-off provisions, the main one being a large revenue contribution to capital. This also includes a contribution that has been delayed from the current year as it is no longer needed to fund the capital programme this year. The current year also includes the repayment of a £6 million loan, and we have another PWLB loan of £6 million that was due for repayment in 2025-26. We're now proposing to refinance this. You'll see that income has only increased by 1.4%, but expenditure has increased by 19.6%. The table shows the movements that have contributed to these increases. Table 5 lists the assumptions that have gone into the preparation of the budget, and these include proposed rent and service and utility charge increases. We will have to increase rent by 2.7%, and as explained in paragraphs 4.25 to 4.27, sheltered housing service and utility charges will also increase as we move to full cost recovery to ensure that services are not funded from rental income. There will also be a new general needs service charge in blocks following consultation. Now, I'd like to draw your attention to paragraph 4.24, which states that we'll be introducing a rent tolerance. An additional rent of 5% over target will be applied once the property is re-let. Section 5 of the report provides some background information regarding rent setting. It explains the history of rent convergence to address rent discrepancies, which ended in 2015, leaving us with 2,930, the majority of our tenancies, below the current social rent level. It also explains rent tolerance, which enables an additional rent flexibility of 5% for non-supported housing and 10% for supported housing. The Cabinet discussed this in our briefing in the autumn when we looked at current social rents and affordability data and the need to introduce it to allow for greater financial security in the business plan and meet our commitment to the Decent Homes Standard and go beyond it. And we have seen that it can be applied without compromising on the affordability of our social rents. There is therefore a recommendation in this report that we apply this tolerance. The reserves are shown in Table 6 in 2024 to 25 and now in 2025 to 26. We've had to use the bulk of our reserves to pay off the £6 million loan I've already mentioned this year and to fund the capital programme through depreciation and also for 2025 to 26 through revenue contribution to capital. Including the working balance reserve, we'll now have just £1.26 million in our reserves at the end of next year. However, the business plan shows that this level can be maintained throughout the 30-year period. The HRA capital programme for 2025 to 26 through to 2029 to 30 is shown in Table 7, and it shows a significant increase in spend for the next 2 years, tailing off after that. This will be financed, as shown, with the revenue contribution to capital I've mentioned, and also increased borrowing in 2026 to 27. The revenue contribution to capital that we're drawing from our strategic reserve will help with the affordability of the capital programme by reducing the cost of borrowing. The increase in the capital programme in the next few years is to the decarbonisation project and increased spending on improving our stock, including a programme of roofing works. Just a quick aside on the business plan. The Council approved the new 30-year HRA business plan last month, and a summary is shown in Appendix A, and paragraphs 4.1 to 4.11 explain the context and challenges facing our HRA, which the business plan has had to consider. And we do have one development underway, which we've discussed in the past, and that's the upland site in Sudbury, and that's shown in the first 3 years of the plan and also in the capital programme. Beyond that, we'll start to lose stock through right-to-buy sales. The receipts from these will contribute to the current development, but we'll have to start repaying them soon if there are no further builds or acquisitions. There are some welcome increased flexibilities for right-to-buy, and these are presented in paragraphs 4.39 and 4.40. With the capital investment in our properties that this plan will ensure, we'll be able to reduce the repairs and maintenance spend, which is a major pressure on our revenue account. So we do have a sustainable plan over the 30-year period, but we must be mindful that significant financial challenges will continue as we strive to fund the work needed on our stock and our decarbonisation programme. So in summary, we've had and will continue to have challenges with the HRA, regulatory compliance, condition of the stock, and the cost of repairs and maintenance, and improving the energy efficiency of the stock, not to mention the difficulty in building or acquiring new homes. However, a huge amount of progress has been made by Deborah Fenton and her team to transform all of our housing services and build a revitalised building services with its 2 renamed teams. Productivity improvements are already evident, the work backlog has reduced considerably, and morale is good. Just to digress slightly, Councillor Potter and I went to the Community Action Day in Holbrook yesterday. Members of our tenancy, repairs and maintenance, public realm and communities teams were very busy doing some excellent spring tidying up and speaking to many of the residents who really appreciated the visit and work. It was good weather, and I assisted with path clearance work and getting rewarded with a piece of Kerry Lacombe's homemade carrot cake, which was excellent. So back to the HRA. Set in the context of all the challenges I've spoken about, the increases in rents and service charges are necessary for the sustainability of the HRA and its business plan. And this now gives us the confidence we need to manage our stock and achieve our aspirations and priorities. I'd therefore like to propose the recommendations in paragraphs 3.1 to 3.9, which summarise the key HRA budget proposals. And I'd also like to thank Deborah and her team, but also finance business partner Jenny Smithies, who is not with us this evening. But to assist me with any questions, Deborah's here, and the rest of the finance team will be able to help, I'm sure. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Busby. We'll now move to questions. As always, councillors can ask as many questions as they wish. However, they have to be relevant to the subject under discussion and must be a question. Councillor Rees.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I apologise, this is probably going to show a great deal of ignorance on my part as to the whole system. I'd just like to ask a few questions about the figures and things in the recommendations. I note, for example, that there's going to be a 9% increase to the current charge for sheltered housing services charges, £3.50 a week, and then the utility charges of another £8.08 a week, which will bring a weekly increase of £11 a week, which is quite a lot. May I just clarify, is it not the case that anybody who can't afford rent gets rent benefit directly from central government, but utility charges and service charges not necessarily so? In which case, would it not make more sense and get more money back from central government to put the rents up as opposed to the service charges? Sorry, that might sound really stupid and dim understanding of the whole system. Thank you.
I think I'll get this right. If not, then somebody will correct me. But the service charges for sheltered housing, we're having to put those up by the amount stated, because at the moment they're getting subsidised from the general rent income, and that's clearly not fair to those who pay rent. Utility charges are pretty much outside of our control. Utility charges do rise. Rents, most of our tenants now, I think, the majority are now getting their rents through universal credit, so that's a payment direct to the tenant. So what was the last part of your question?
Sorry, it was given that the money that's from central government, would it not make sense to?
I think that the universal credit cover for rent is fixed by government rather than and the level of social rent rather than what we want to be able to add to our rents. Is that kind of right?
Shall I summarise for you? So the utility costs are the actual charges, you know, in terms of gas, electric and lighting. So we simply charge, well, we aim to charge the actual cost. These are still subsidised, but we will be going up to full cost recovery within 5 years. The rent, as the councillor alluded to, is set by central government, so we can't increase that anything over and above what central government allow us to. The service charge covers things like the cleaning, you know, the support we give residents, and if residents are entitled to benefits, both the service charge and the utilities, if the utilities are for the communal area, would actually be covered by benefits.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's got 3 questions. In table 2B, voids seem to be increasing with consequent increase in void losses. Just wondered why and what we're doing about this. Second question, table 6. We got a forecast balance on the strategic reserve this year at 8.6 million. But with the deficit of 8.5 million, it leaves us just 260,000 for next year. Wondered, is that going to be a risk going forward? And on the tolerance, now I know, if I got it right, it's only going to be on new, when something goes back up for rent, the 5% additional increase, that's right. How much extra do we envision that would give us if we do go, or when we go with tolerance, if it's already been decided? Thank you.
Firstly, as I pointed out in my introduction, the total reserves of about £1.25 million can be made.
Can you speak to the mic, please?
Sorry, yeah.
And to the chair.
Right, okay, I'll be spinning around here. Where was it? The reserves, yeah. 1.26 million is the reserves at the end of the next financial year. As I pointed out in my introduction, the business plan shows that we can maintain that level of reserves throughout the lifetime of the 30-year business plan. So I have no qualms or worries about that. Tolerance. Yes, Councillor Jameson, that extra 5% tolerance will be applied when a property comes up for a new tenancy. In terms of the total amount that we can get from that, that will depend on the rate at which tenancies change. I will ask, but I don't think we've got any indication at this moment as to what kind of additional income we can expect from that. Before I get you to answer, I'm going to pass the voids one over to you as well, as to why there's an increase in the voids costs between the current year and the new year.
Thank you. So if I just mention tolerance first, I haven't got the figure for Babergh as an individual council, but when we looked at the figures for both Babergh and Mid Suffolk over the 30-year business plan, I think it was about £25 million in additional income. But if you want to know how that translates yearly, I can get that. Secondly, onto the voids. We've increased the budget firstly because we didn't have enough in the budget last year. But what are we doing to reduce that? So as members will be aware, we are in the middle of a restructuring housing management where we are decreasing the patch sizes from 1,000 properties to 550, I think it is off the top of my head. So that means our officers will have more opportunity to get out around the estates, around the houses, knowing our tenants. And also we're introducing a tenancy sustainment team. So these will be team members which will have specific skills in terms of working with people who are hoarding, who've got more complex needs. In addition to that, we're going to be introducing a scheme called Good to Go, where we inspect every property from people who are at the very top of each of the band, and if they have committed willful damage and neglect, we will be suspending their right to bid on the choice-based letting system until they have put the willful damage and neglect in the property right. And I've worked on a scheme like that before, introduced a scheme, and that does work in terms of bringing void costs down. So if you just think about those three options, those three pieces of work that I've just talked about, that they are going to be reducing the void costs going forward.
Any more questions? Councillor Hurren.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Before I finally fell off the perch last night and went to sleep, I did pick up a couple of things which I think I should ask. One is the right to buy scheme, which thankfully is, I believe, coming to an end. So the question is, how much will that affect our revenue? And on the plus side, we'll be able to keep the houses and keep the income stream coming from them. I just wondered, hard one off the top of your head, Councillor Ward, but I just wondered how much financial gain we could expect from that. And my second question, something would be wrong if I didn't ask this, but about 12 years ago, we borrowed £89 million to buy our own houses back that we already owned, so that we could take back control of the running of them. Now, looking through the figures last night, the £89 million now seems to be about 87, if I was correct. So it means in 12 years, we paid back about £2 million. So I think the question here is should we just give up trying? Because it's going to take 2 generations for us to actually own them again at that rate. It's a travesty, and I just wondered what the officers, Councillor Ward or Deborah, of course. Where are we going at? It's a terrible milestone around our necks, isn't it? Yeah, we shouldn't have done it, and we're still not reaping any benefit from it. So a few words on that, just to say where we are, where are we going with this, would be gratefully received. Thank you.
I'll let Deborah answer the second part regarding the repayment of the borrowing, but in terms of right to buy sales, they're at a very low level, at about a half a dozen or so a year, but the right to buy will continue, although there have been some changes to the actual way that the scheme operates. But the problem we have is being able to spend those right to buy receipts within the time frame necessary, and that means being able to acquire Section 106 affordable housing or build our own, and we find it very difficult for us to do the latter because we simply don't have the land or the borrowing capability. Well, when I say we don't have the borrowing capability, we do have flexibility now in the removal of the borrowing cap within the HRA, but it still will have an impact in terms of interest and repayments.
Any more questions, or can we move? No. Councillor Rees? Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Thank you. So on the subject of debt, I think I just need to assure councillors that we are not in a unique position here. We are in the same position as the majority of other councils. And I've talked before about the reasons for that. We know that there are discussions going on, in government in terms of, how this issue is going to be resolved. And I'm attending a conference up in Sheffield, and I believe Councillor Carter is also attending, where the Minister for Housing will be giving a presentation, and I think although it's not a settling answer, I think we need to just wait and see what government comes up with to try and help us solve this issue.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is probably a question addressed, if I may, to Ms Fenton and Mr Hobbs here. I was pleased to hear about the tenancy engagement changes that are going to be made for vulnerable tenants with complex needs. I was just wondering if there's any provision being made to address the rate of difficulty with serial movers, especially where there are tenancy swaps are concerned, which undoubtedly use up a lot of our tenancy services resources. And I was wondering if any progress, there's going to be any progress in addressing those specific types of challenges. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sorry, could I ask, Councillor, are you referring to mutual exchanges where they choose?
Yes, sorry, I got the terminology wrong. Yes, thanks, because a lot of the tenants in those situations are quite vulnerable and do have complex needs.
Under the terms of the housing legislation, tenants have a right to mutually exchange. So we as a housing authority cannot stop that. We will be having tenancy sustainment officers who can support vulnerable tenants, but unfortunately there's nothing we can do about that.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got a question about our sheltered housing, which, if Councillor Ward cannot answer, I'm sure the Director of Housing will be able to answer it. So sheltered housing, it seems fairly clear that if we were building properties like this now, or flats like this now, we wouldn't be building them the way we did many years ago. Now, it says in the report about potential cost-saving measures for running the schemes, and we are also focused on getting funding for decarbonisation. Having been in a couple of the schemes, I would say that in summer, they're positively equatorial. It seems almost impossible for residents to have any control over their heating. So my question is, would we be able to use some of the energy decarbonisation funding to look at the energy usage of these schemes, or are we intending to make improvements to the energy utilisation of these schemes? Thank you. Apologies, Madam Chair, I was not facing you at that moment.
Thank you. So I can answer that in a broader sense. We can't use the social housing decarbonisation funding unless the properties are at an EP, a relatively low EPC. However, we do recognise there are challenges with sheltered housing, both in the terms of energy costs, decor, age, and suitability for, for older people. And I think it's fair to say that, if we went out and surveyed, people in their mid-50s, they probably wouldn't be choosing to live in one of our sheltered housing blocks. So we are going to be doing a review of all our sheltered housing to look at, potential lifespan, viability, and also its feasibility in terms of energy cost, usage, repairs. So out of that will come a report, and then we'll be discussing that with the portfolio holder and cabinet, and putting a recommendation forward in terms of how we rationalise and our sheltered housing stock, but equally we also look to provide suitable accommodation for our older people, which is within what their expectations.
Any more questions before we move to debate?
Yes, Chair. As you probably remember, I seconded the item. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to go at 7:45. Will it cause a problem that I second it and then disappear before the end? Or can you find a seconder?
We'll have a seconder then. Councillor Carter? Yeah. Thank you. Okay, we're now moving to debate. All questions are finished. As you well know, the debate councillors will only be allowed to speak once and for a total of 3 minutes, and this will be timed. Who's going to open the debate? Don't all rush at once. Do you want to move to the vote? Yes? Thank you very much. I'll now... John, you wish to sum up? Sorry.
Very briefly, actually, Chair. Yeah.
I've heard that before tonight.
No,
Not necessarily.
This really isn't a summing up of the HRA, but it is. I do want to express my thanks to the whole of the team over there, Melissa, Jack, Alistair, but also David and Sean, who are not with us, and Karen before she departed. The amount of work that's gone into both, and Jenny, of course, who I mentioned earlier, the amount of work that's gone into both of these budgets over the past few months has been phenomenal, and they really have worked their socks off, and I do want to put it on record that I think we've got an excellent team. Melissa, you've got a wonderful group of people behind you, and I do thank you all for that.
Super, thank you. Well done, team. So in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 19.3, immediately after any vote is taken at a budget decision-making meeting of the Council, the names of councillors who cast a vote for the decision or against the decision, or who abstained from voting, shall be recorded in the minutes of that meeting. I'll now ask the Acting Head of Governance and Civic Office to conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, members. That vote is now in progress. Councillor Grandin, may I take your vote, please?
4.
Thank you. Thank you, members. That is 25 votes for, so that's carried, Chair.
So I propose we take a comfort break of just over 5 minutes. Can we handle that? Thank you. 1.
It's 7:30 due off.
Thank you. We're now live and recording, so business has resumed. Did you give us the outcome of the vote?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, right. We now move to paper BC 2443, Joint Capital Investment and Treasury Management Strategies for 2025 and 26. And I'd like to invite Councillor Hurren to introduce the paper and to move the recommendations in the report. Councillor Hurren.
Thank you so much, Madam Chairman. Now comes for the exciting bit. It's a pleasure to be presenting this after so much work by the team, obviously, and the committee itself. This report presents the joint capital investment and treasury management strategies for the 25-26 year, the one just coming up. This is an annual report in accordance with regulations and best practice. This report was considered at Joint Audit and Scrutiny Committee on the 10th of February, the meeting before last, and is now presented to this Council for approval. The report contains a number of recommendations as follows. Approval of the joint capital strategy as set out in Appendix A. This includes reducing the limit for the capitalisation of assets from 10k to 1k. Approval of the joint investment strategy for service and commercial investments as set out in Appendix B. Support for the development of an environmental, social and governance, known as the ESG strategy, for financing capital projects and to work in conjunction with the strategic asset management strategy as discussed in Appendix C. Approval of the joint treasury management strategy, including the joint annual investment strategy as set out in Appendix C. Key features of this are to increase the investment limit from 2 million to 5 million, to remove the upper limit of 2 million on the operational bank account, to not allow any lending to other local authorities in the coming year, approval of the joint management indicators as set out in Appendix D, also approval of the joint treasury management policy statement as set in Appendix F, approval of the joint minimum revenue provision policy statement as set out in Appendix G. Also noting of the key factors and information relating to and affecting treasury management activities set out in Appendix E. There is one change to the report from the version presented to JASC on the 10th of February, and it is as follows. Appendix C, paragraph 4.35 and 436. These paragraphs set out the Council's policy on apportioning interest to the housing revenue account. The previous version of the policy proposed the measurement of the net borrowing by the HRA from general fund and the use of the Council's average interest rate on investments to include the interest to be apportioned. The wording has therefore been changed to state that the borrowings by the housing revenue account from the general fund will be calculated based on the Council's average interest rate on short-term borrowings. The cash investment by the housing revenue account into the general fund will be calculated based on the Council's average interest rate on short-term investments adjusted for credit risks. This amendment brings the strategy into line with the change to this policy that was agreed last year and is in line with best practice. I'm happy to take any questions on this report, and I have Melissa and Alistair here as backup because they're bound to be technical ones. The Director of Corporate Resources is also in attendance and will assist me with any technical questions. Chairman, I'm happy to propose this paper and look for a seconder later, and the recommendations are on your page 131, 31 to 311, if I remember correctly. It seems dry stuff, but we have dealt with this coming up to this coming year, and well, we're proud to present it tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hurren. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Register. We now move to questions. As always, councillors can ask as many questions as they wish, but the questions must be relevant to the subject under discussion, and it must be a question. Any questions? Councillor Jameson.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor, I did try to read the report with due diligence, but it's not the most riveting read, so I do apologise if I've misinterpreted what we're going to ask here. Look at it, we do seem to have a lot of borrowing, and I'm just looking at on table 5 on page 159, the ratio of debt against the authorised limit seems to be going up year on year, and I just wondered if you could say, is that something that's going to continue, or are we looking to reduce that borrowing ratio? Is it going to be a problem? That's all. Thank you.
We do seem to be in the age of borrowing. We are carrying a lot of borrowing. If I could look to Melissa, please, just to look at the figures. But yes, you're quite right, and it is worrying. The borrowing on housing as well. We do carry a lot of debt.
Yeah, through you, Chair, thank you. Yeah, as Councillor Hurren pointed out, some of that debt is related to the HRA as well, so about 90 million pounds of that is the HRA. I think in terms of the levels, I think they're probably getting close to the levels where I would like us to see us not borrowing anymore. But if we do make the decision to borrow more, I'd like those decisions based on the decision paying back any financing costs that are associated with that. So it washes its face and makes a surplus to repay those financing costs. So.
Thank you, Melissa. Any other questions? Can we move? Councillor Saw.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question about pooled funds and the composition of the pooled funds. I would like confirmation and clarification of the holding that we have in Shell. The reason why I'm asking this is because I would like to know, is it a historic investment? How big an investment it is? And whether it was an investment that was made recently, and why we can't divest ourselves of that investment. Thank you.
Yes, Chairman, we have discussed this at great length. It's historic. I'll ask Melissa for confirmation, probably about 15 years ago, and it's, I think it's about 3% of what we call a bundle. It's very difficult to get out of on its own, but we do have it in the radar, and yeah, I would hope Melissa can flush out the facts for you. It's small fry, but it is important. I agree with you, Councillor Saw.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so that's the Schroeder Maximiser investment fund that we have. It's about 3% invested in Shell, which is about £50,000 of that investment, and that investment was taken out in 2015. So we've had it for a long time. So it's not a new decision that we've entered into. It was a historic one.
Any other questions, or can we move to debate? Councillor Davis.
So could you just confirm why we can't divest ourselves of it? Is it because it's all, yeah, thank you, yeah.
I forgot that last bit of the question. Yeah, we are actually doing a pooled fund paper that we'll be taking to Joint Audit and Standards Committee, hopefully in April. So we will look at the recommendations around that. At the moment, the fund is valued less than what we've invested in it. The capital sum is worth less than what we've invested. So if we sold that investment, we would cash in that loss, if you like, and it would be a real hit on our general fund. So we just want to look at the opportunities to either reduce our debt, what that does to the general fund in terms of financing costs. So we just want to give you kind of all of that information so that we're making a prudent and sensible decision with that in mind. So.
Thank you. Anyone else? Move to debate. Who would like to open the debate? Move to the vote. Councillor Ward?
Okay, well, I didn't know whether Councillor Saul was going to follow on from her question on Shell, but I will in debate.
You're in debate?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, I very much am. Because the question of our investment in Shell is quite a hot topic at the moment because of a certain pronouncement by the leader of the County Council at a meeting on the 9th of January. I was in the public gallery at that meeting. It was a meeting to decide whether to go onto the Devo priority programme. But at the end of that meeting, he did say, and I quote the exact words, I think it was something like, in the past 8 weeks, Babergh and Mid-Suffolk has invested millions of pounds in Shell. Now, there are a number of words to describe that, especially in the light of the clarification we've had this evening. Inaccurate, untrue. I perhaps ought to avoid the L word, but we're getting close to the truth there. It seems to be unreal that a comment like that was made when quite clearly the evidence, the facts, belie it. So I just thought that this does need to be publicised, and I know other councillors in the county, in Mid-Suffolk and elsewhere, have been commenting on this in the press, but I just wanted to comment on it this evening.
Thank you.
I'd just like to say I can't see the point of Councillor Ward's comments because it's a political comment and it's got nothing to do with this particular debate.
The debate concerns investment, and the question was on investment. So Councillor Ward replied on how and why we have investments the way we do. And the analogy was Suffolk County Council. Okay. Councillor Register, are you debating, please?
I am.
Thank
I
you.
am. To follow that up, when I heard that comment, I immediately thought this is going to be Schroders or one of the other pooled funds, because as Babergh, Mid-Suffolk, we do not have control over individual investments within a pooled fund. So, and I was not surprised when it's a 10-year-old investment. What else was in there? Was there originally Gazprom in there? Were we giving it to Russian oligarchs? Who knows? That's one of the problems with investing in stocks and shares. You don't know, if you're working with pooled funds, what you're actually investing in.
Vote. I will... Councillor Hurren, do you wish to wrap up before I move to...
Not particularly, Madam Chairman, only just to thank the officers. As before, there's been a ton of work gone into this, and a bit of a tough learning curve for the Chairman, especially with some of the other things that have gone on. But we remain capable and up for the scrap. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you. I'll now ask the Acting Head of Governance and Civic Office to conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress. Councillor Grandin, may I take your vote?
4.
Thank you. Thank you, members. That is 21 votes for, 22 votes for, and two abstentions. Sorry, 2 abstentions.
And Mid-Suffolk Joint Local Development Scheme for 2025 to 2029. I'd like to invite Councillor Sally Davis, Cabinet Member for Heritage Planning and Infrastructure, to introduce the paper and to move the recommendation in the report. Councillor Davis, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Now for something completely different. As members will know, we took the decision to review our joint local plan after the planning inspector advised us that we should not continue with the existing plan because it's based on delivering to old housing number targets. The new National Planning Policy Framework, which was introduced late last year, imposed new targets. So we will review our existing plan and develop it into a new plan that will be adopted in 2029 for the period to 2044. The local development scheme before you sets out the context and a broad indicative timetable. We are expected by government to provide them with our updated LDS by the 6th of March, and that's why this is before you this evening. There's a great deal of work to be done on the new joint local plan, not only by the strategic planning team, but by officers across our district council. Our community teams, for example, will be crucial to help us engage meaningfully at an early stage with our parishes and residents. The housing numbers we face are a huge challenge. 775 houses per year, up 86% from the previous housing target. We want our communities to fully participate in deciding where those houses will go. We want communities to work with us to plan their own futures. I fundamentally disagree with these housing targets and the way in which they are supposed to be delivered, and I do not believe as they stand they will solve our housing crisis. But that's irrelevant. We have no choice but to plan and deliver these large numbers, and I very much hope our communities will understand this. I'm very pleased to say that we now have in place a highly experienced, knowledgeable project manager, Keith Keeley. Project management is essential for this task, which is extremely complex and time critical. We will be working under the new scheme for local plans, which requires us to deliver the plan within 30 months. For the first 9 to 12 months, that's now, we will be gathering key evidence and consulting with our communities. So at this time next year, we aim to formally start the plan and 30 months later adopt it. There are external factors that will have an impact on our timetable. Legislation in the autumn may change the plan-making process. Ipswich may declare that it has an unmet housing need and may turn to neighbouring authorities to help it deliver that unmet need. Babergh has a duty to cooperate with our neighbouring authorities, so we must consider Ipswich's circumstances, even if we do not feel we can assist them. We do not know when Ipswich will conclude their work to establish how many homes they can deliver in their current boundaries, and officers are working closely with their colleagues to establish this. In the meantime, we will therefore plan for several scenarios. 2029, when the plan is due to be adopted, is of course after the intended timetable for local government reorganisation and devolution. Nevertheless, whichever council oversees plan making, we must put together our new plan for our geographical area. Otherwise, we risk having an out-of-date plan. I'll be updating members about progress on the joint local plan at each full council meeting. I have confidence that we will deliver the plan within the timetable. We have an impressive strategic planning team at Babergh and Mid-Suffolk, now supported by a project manager who is a safe pair of hands. And I know other teams at Babergh will step up when needed, because the joint local plan is one of the most important things a district council does. So I'm asking you to approve for adoption the local development scheme following the recommendation in paragraph 3.1 of the report.
Councillor, can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Saw, thank you very much. We'll now move to questions. As always, you can ask as many as you want, but they have to be relevant to the subject under discussion and must not be of a personal or commercial nature. So who would like? Councillor Rees?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd just like to ask, please, the design part B on page 206, Local Design Code Supplementary Planning Document. Is this to include measures to reduce light pollution, please? Particularly in accordance with the National Landscape, the Dedham Vale Lighting Design Guide that we try and, in the AONB, the AONB National Landscape, now we try and disseminate and encourage as much as possible. Is there to be a provision for reduction of light pollution, please, involved in this design guide?
Yeah, we do cover dark skies elsewhere in the joint local plan, and I don't know what work has been done on this design code at the moment, so I will refer to officers on that, please.
Just to add, yes, we are working on this, and it is something that we can include within that. We would fully expect to deal with that question of dark skies and lighting, and clearly it is supplementary guidance to the joint local plan policies.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Can we move to debate? Move to the vote? Thank you very much. Before we move to the vote, Councillor Davis, do you wish to wrap anything up? No? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress. Councillor Grandin, may I take your vote? 4. Thank you. Thank you, members. That's 23 votes for, so that's carried, Chair.
Thank you very much. We now move to paper BC 2445, Joint Statement of Community Involvement. And I now invite Councillor Sally Davis, Cabinet Member for Heritage Planning and Infrastructure, to introduce the paper and to move the recommendations in the report. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. I ask members to agree to consultation on an addition to the Statement of Community Involvement. There is a new Appendix A on the system, which I hope you've seen, which sets out the new wording. The previous appendix was background figures. So I hope everybody's seen that. So the paper before you sets out the facts and figures about the letters the Babergh planning team send to neighbours when minor planning applications are made, which may affect those neighbours. I'll be brief. It costs us around £18,000 a year to send these out. We're not under a statutory duty to do so, and in the modern world, it's questionable whether they are now an effective way of communicating with our residents given those costs. I know some members are concerned about this change, and that's why we need to consult and consider possible measures to avoid excluding those who do not use digital methods of communication. I must emphasise that this is a consultation, and we're inviting comment about all of the categories of application on which we send letters. This is not major applications. It does not affect major applications. And the proposed savings are also a way of helping Babergh to manage its efficiency and cost in a very challenging financial environment. So I ask Council to agree to start a consultation on the addendum to the Statement of Community Involvement included at Appendix A, and to delegate the final decision to the Director of Planning in consultation with the portfolio holder.
Thank you very much. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor McCraw. We'll now move to questions. As always, the questions have to be pertinent to the discussion, to the subject under discussion, and must be a question and not of a personal or commercial nature. Councillor Clover.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. In terms of, it is concerning this, Councillor Davis, because there are certain people in our society that aren't digitally literate, and they may not go out of their houses very much, so they have no way of knowing that there's a planning application in their neighbourhood. What are the measures that you suggest or propose to actually keep them involved in this process?
Yeah, I mean, I share your concerns. And it's difficult to get to people like that in the consultation. By their very nature, they're quite hard to find, and I think that applies to any sort of consultation. One of the ideas is we put up site notices to make them more visible, to make people more aware of them. That's one of the ideas. But also, I would hope that the consultation would throw up some ideas as well. But we are, you know, I am very cognizant of the fact that we do need to think about these people. So we're thinking of other methods. I haven't thought about them yet, but yeah, we're looking at it, yeah.
More questions? Councillor Rees and then Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Sorry, I would just like to clarify these categories of minor, other and householder. What examples of minor will this cover, please?
I'm going to hand that over to officers for the specific definitions.
Thank you. So minor category applications are typically less than 10 dwellings. Major category applications include 10 dwellings or more and sites that are larger than half a hectare. Other category applications typically include things like changes of use, advertisement consents, and those sorts of things. And householders are a distinct category from those.
I may have missed something, but I'm trying to reconcile the numbers in Table 2 with Appendix A. They do seem to be different for the year 2023 to 24.
We knew somebody would spot that, John, so I'm going to hang that over to you.
Thank you, yes. Checking through, the figures in Table 1 are correct. They're an error in Table 2, and the appendix paper gives the correct figures for Table 2 as quoted in the report versus what was the Appendix A. And Table 3, there is an error in there, and I think you have a matter of human calculation in transposing from the spreadsheet into the report. I think the important thing is that concerns the cost of consultation over a period. The response rate that we've achieved, from whatever means of consultation, is correct within that. So, albeit that we're not quite correct on the maths, and as a planner I've never claimed to be, the figures in there for responses relative to the number of letters received is accurate.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm sorry if I've missed this. I'm sorry if I've missed this, but how are you going to consult? How are you going to do the consultation?
Well, we know we're going to consult with parish councils and possibly agents. Other than that, I don't know any other details on consultation. Have we formed any plans on that?
What we would typically do is put a note on our website. We're certainly expecting to consult parish councils so they're made aware and to bring that to the attention of their communities. Our website, we found, usually attracts quite a lot of interest once that is made available to people, and that tends to drive a lot of comments in, as we've said in the report.
Is that so? I mean, if you're trying to get to the people who doesn't use the internet, I think we need to really work with our parishes to try and get them to get out there and help us on that one. Thank you.
Any more questions, or can we move to the vote? Well, yeah. Councillor Saw, you want to ask a question? No, I thought your hand was up. Okay. Councillor Davis, do you wish to wrap up? No? I know. Oh, right.
Before she can wrap up the debate.
Yeah, I know. I'm getting tired. Yeah. Councillor McCraw.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering, with the time going on, do we need to have a vote to continue this meeting beyond the 3-hour period?
Okay, so I've got Councillor McGraw, Councillor Clover and Councillor Grandin. So if I take, and Councillor Ward, if I take Councillor Ward first and Councillor Rees at the end.
Should we do the guillotine vote before we get into the questions, just in case, because we've got 6 minutes until...
Okay, we've got 6 minutes to go when I have to bring the guillotine down. Well, there's 6 minutes and 5 people.
Just vote to extend it.
So can you vote to extend it? Yes?
All I just wanted to say was...
Right, I've got to read this out. 3 hours have elapsed after the commencement of this meeting. In accordance with the Council's constitution, the guillotine rule must be applied for the meeting to continue. We need to vote for the guillotine rule to be applied. May I have a proposer? Councillor McCraw, and a seconder, Councillor Saw. All those in favour by a show of hands. Thank you. Now we can proceed. Councillor Ward.
Yeah, I'm not going to be long. I just think
Said
this...
that the last time.
Yeah. I do think that this is a timely and necessary change. We've seen from the numbers that the responses to the letters is very, very few. Are the letters having any effect? We already put up site notices, published in the press. Those are the means of communication we have to do. The letters are not. They are a discretionary service. And I know how my colleagues opposite do not really care too much for unnecessary discretionary services. And this is an unnecessary discretionary service. It will save us money, quite a bit of money, and particularly for something that has very little effect and seems to be very little used by residents. My only gripe, and I have articulated this in briefings, is that I think that majors should be included as well. I see no reason why we send out letters, or we will still send out letters for majors. After all, they're the applications that really will be spread around very quickly by word of mouth. But even the others will be as well. So those people that won't receive letters and may not look at site notices, and that would be very, very few. They're all very diligent at looking for site notices. We'll soon find out by other means anyway. So, as I said, this is timely and necessary, so I fully support this.
Yes, Chair, it's just, I think, to reassure members dealing with the digital side of the Council's operations, more people have access to the internet than they themselves sometimes realise. People don't always equate the mobile phone that they have, their daughter has, or a friend of theirs has. Word of mouth through parish councils will go a long way. And I have to say, a lot of the people who don't respond to such consultations are probably the sort of people who don't, I have to say this, but don't tend to take an interest in much that goes on in their own communities anyway. That's not to say they shouldn't be catered for, of course they should. But that's the whole point of this consultation, is to bring out those methods. So obviously I support this. I voted, I seconded it.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd just like to say that if you're running a direct mail campaign and you got a 5% response, you'd have a very happy client. So that's just to put these figures in context. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I would agree with Councillor Clover. We've been talking multi-millions in some of our discussions this evening. And here we are talking about a cost of 18,000. And while 18,000 is a figure, but it's nothing, it's a drop in the ocean. And we're talking about democracy here and people who may not be aware through other means of what's going on in their vicinity. I'm happy that we're having a consultation on it, but then again, the consultation perhaps should be included by letter to be inclusive, not just through parish councils and the website, if to people. So if I had 9 houses being built in the next road to me or adjacent to me, I would want to know by letter, because I might miss it otherwise. I might have been in for a while or ill or whatever. So it should be more inclusive than this. And if we were talking about a much larger sum, I would agree that it's a saving that needs to be made. But when we're talking about smaller figures, it's important that we do our duty by informing people. And we could perhaps, with each letter that goes out on these situations, say, if you don't want to receive such communications in future, email us to let us know, something of that nature. And we could have such notices on our websites. If you don't want to hear from us about minor applications, inform us. And so gradually that list may be reduced anyway. But I think to save 18,000 but not have some people in our communities informed is not a good idea. I think I'm happy to vote to have a consultation on it, but I think the consultation itself should be broader. Thank you.
To sum up. Oh, Councillor Rees has to go before you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm afraid I can't help thinking that the very thought of doing this now seems to be falling into Keir Starmer's government's crusade against NIMBYism. How opportune for us. And it's worth noting that Councillor Grandon mentioned the figures involved here, and yes, we've been talking in millions, and then we get things like 11p mentioned in another debate and something like that, 4p here and only a fiver there. And at the risk of upsetting people, let's not forget that the £69,000 it costs to just give staff another day off would pay for 3.5 years' worth, if not more, over 3.5 years' worth of these letters at £18,000 a year. Thank you.
Councillor Davis, the floor is yours.
I do think that every little helps, and although councillors keep saying it's not that amount of money, if you look at the budget, it is lots of bits of money from all different departments that goes into making that budget balance, and this is something that planning has decided it can contribute. We've got to remember this is not a statutory duty. There are some things that we have to do, one of which is advertise in the local newspaper. Now, if there is anything that is absolutely of no use whatsoever, it is us paying a lot more than £18,000 a year to advertise planning applications in the local newspaper. That is the real one we should be cutting, but we can't. That is a statutory duty. There are other ways of informing people about planning applications. Word of mouth is remarkably efficient. And personally, one of the things I favour is making the site notices more noticeable and making sure people, doing whatever we can to make sure people see those. But I do think this is a justified cut in this day and age, but we must do all we can not to exclude people. Have I finished? Yes, I've finished.
Councillor.
Yes, that's Councillor McCall.
Okay. I'll now ask, I'll now ask the Acting Head of Governance and Civic Office, to conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress. Councillor Grandin, may I take your vote, please?
Against.
Thank you. Thank you, members. That is 19 votes for and 4 votes against. That's carried, Chair.
Okay. And I believe that Councillor Saw has something to present.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to put forward Councillor Laura Smith as Babergh member to the Suffolk Health and Wellbeing Board. Thank you.
Now, that obviously is I need a seconder. Councillor Ward. And now we need to put it to the vote. Is it an electronic vote?
It is.
Okay, so, yeah.
That vote is now in progress, members. Councillor Grandin, may I take your vote, please?
4.
Thank you. Thank you, members. That is 20 votes for and 1 abstention, so that's carried, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Motions on notice. We haven't received any, therefore it is 20:35 and I am closing the meeting, but would remind you that the next meeting is on Thursday, 20th of March at 5:30 p.m. Thank you very much, everyone.